never imagined that the worst decision of my life would be accepting a cup of tea from my mother-in-law. It started so innocently. Patricia Whitmore had always been the picture of suburban perfection. Blonde highlights touched up every 6 weeks at her favorite salon in downtown Evanston, tennis whites pressed to crisp perfection, and a smile that never quite reached her ice blue eyes. When Marcus first brought me home to meet her 3 years ago, I thought the coldness was just nervousness. A mother protective of her only son. I told myself she'd warm up eventually. I was wrong about so many things. My name is Sienna Brooks, I'm 28 years old, and this is my story, the story of how I almost lost everything, including my mind, before I discovered the truth hiding in plain sight. But before we go any further, if you're enjoying the story, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps me keep sharing these stories. The morning everything changed started like any other Wednesday. I woke up in our bedroom in the Whitmore family estate, a sprawling Victorian in Evanston that had been in Marcus's family for 4 generations. The early October sunlight filtered through the gauze curtains, creating patterns on the hardwood floor that I'd photographed dozens of times for my design portfolio. I was a freelance graphic designer, working mostly from home, which Patricia had made clear she found quaint compared to Marcus's prestigious position at Hartley and Ross, one of Chicago's top corporate law firms. I rolled over to find Marcus's side of the bed already empty and cold. He'd been leaving earlier and earlier for work lately, sometimes before 6 in the morning. When I asked about it, he'd kiss my forehead and mutter something about a big merger, his mind already at the office. I padded downstairs in my pajamas, my head feeling foggy and heavy. I'd been having terrible headaches for months now, accompanied by bouts of dizziness and what I can only describe as brain fog. My doctor had run tests, blood work, MRIs, everything, but found nothing conclusive. Probably stress, she'd said, prescribing me anxiety medication that sat untouched in my bathroom cabinet. I didn't feel anxious. I felt off.
Wrong.
Like my body was betraying me in ways I couldn't articulate. Patricia was already in the kitchen naturally. She'd insisted on moving in with us 6 months ago, after what she called a health scare that Marcus never fully explained to me. Something about her heart, requiring her to avoid living alone. The estate was certainly big enough. She had her own wing, but her presence had transformed our home into something that felt less like ours and more like hers. "Good morning, Sienna dear," she said, her voice dripping with a kind of sweetness that felt vaguely threatening. She was already dressed in cream-colored slacks and a cashmere sweater set, pearls at her throat. "You look exhausted. Another rough night." I slumped into one of the kitchen chairs, pressing my fingers to my temples. "Just a headache. I'll be fine." Patricia's lips pursed as she poured steaming liquid from the teapot into 2 delicate china cups, part of her collection that she'd brought with her when she moved in. "You know, Marcus mentioned he's concerned about you. These headaches, the forgetfulness, the mood swings." Mood swings. I looked up sharply. "What mood swings?" "Darling, you screamed at him last week because he moved your design sketches." Her tone was patient, condescending, like she was explaining something to a child. "He told me he's walking on eggshells around you." My chest tightened. I had been upset about the sketches. They were for a major client presentation, and he'd knocked them off my desk while looking for his cufflinks. But screaming? I didn't remember screaming. I remembered being frustrated, asking him to be more careful, but here. Patricia slid one of the teacups toward me. "Chamomile with honey. It'll help with the headache. I used to give it to patients all the time when I worked at St. Catherine's. St. Catherine's Psychiatric Hospital." Patricia never let anyone forget that she'd been a psychiatric nurse for 20 years before retiring. She wore it like a badge of authority, especially when discussing my episodes, as she'd started calling them. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, breathing in the sweet floral scent. "Thank you." "Of course, sweetheart." She settled into the chair across from me, cradling her own cup. "You know I only want what's best for you. For both of you." I took a long sip of the tea. It was slightly bitter beneath the honey, but I'd never been a huge fan of chamomile anyway. Patricia watched me drink with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Marcus is working late again tonight," she continued. The Vanderburg merger. He called this morning to let me know. I thought perhaps you and I could have dinner together. We so rarely get quality time, just as girls. The thought made my stomach clench, though I couldn't say why. Patricia had never been overtly cruel to me. She'd never yelled or insulted me directly. But there was something in the way she looked at me sometimes, something cold and calculating, that made me feel like a bug under a microscope. That sounds nice. I lied, taking another sip of tea. By noon, I was barely functional. The brain fog had intensified into something worse. My thoughts felt sluggish, disconnected, like I was trying to think through molasses. I'd been working on a logo design for a new restaurant in Lincoln Park, but I kept forgetting what I was doing, staring at my screen in confusion. I saved my work and stumbled upstairs to lie down. Patricia found me there an hour later, calling my name from the doorway. Sienna? Are you all right? I tried to sit up, but the room spun. Just dizzy. Her cool hand pressed against my forehead. You're clammy. Have you eaten today? I couldn't remember. Had I? This is what I've been telling Marcus, Patricia said, her voice heavy with concern. These spells are getting worse. I really think you should see a specialist. Someone who can help with the psychological components. Psychological? The word felt thick in my mouth. Darling, there's no shame in it. Mental health issues run in families sometimes. Has anyone on your side struggled with instability? My side. She made it sound like a war. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 22. I had no siblings, no extended family to speak of. Patricia knew this. She'd known it from the beginning. I'm not crazy, I whispered. Of course not, sweetheart. But anxiety, depression, even early onset psychosis. These are medical conditions, not character flaws. We just want you to get help. We. Her and Marcus. Discussing me, my mental state, my episodes behind my back. I closed my eyes, feeling tears burn behind my lids. Maybe she was right. Maybe something was wrong with me, something the tests hadn't caught. The headaches, the forgetfulness, the way time seemed to slip and slide lately. Last week, I'd found my phone in the refrigerator and had no memory of putting it there. Marcus had laughed it off, but I'd seen the look he exchanged with his mother. That evening, Patricia made dinner, her specialty, chicken piccata with roasted vegetables. I forced myself to eat, even though my stomach felt unsettled. Marcus called to say he'd be even later than expected, not home until after 10. Patricia squeezed my hand sympathetically. He works so hard, she said, providing for this family. It must be stressful for him, worrying about you on top of everything else. Guilt twisted in my gut. She was right. Marcus had been stressed lately, distant. And I'd been so wrapped up in my own health issues that I hadn't been supporting him the way a wife should. After dinner, I helped Patricia clean up, then retreated to my small home office on the second floor. I tried to work, but couldn't focus. The words on my screen blurred together. I felt simultaneously exhausted and restless, my skin crawling with an anxiety I couldn't name. Around 9, I went to the bathroom connected to our bedroom. I needed my anxiety medication. Maybe my doctor had been right after all. Maybe I should start taking it. I opened the medicine cabinet and froze. My prescription bottle was in a different place. I always kept it on the left side of the top shelf, next to my vitamins. Now it was on the right side, pushed toward the back. Small thing. Meaningless, probably. Marcus could have moved it while looking for aspirin. Or Patricia, when she'd organized our bathroom last month without asking. But something made me open the bottle. The pills inside were white and round, identical to the ones I'd seen when the prescription was first filled. But as I shook one into my palm, I noticed something odd. The imprint on the pill was different. Slightly different, but different enough. My heart started to pound. I grabbed my phone and Googled the imprint code on the actual pill in my hand. It took a few tries. My fingers were shaking, but eventually the results loaded. Lorazepam. A benzodiazepine. My prescription was for sertraline, an SSID antidepressant. Someone had switched my pills. I stood there in the bathroom, the white pill in my palm, my entire world tilting sideways. Who would do this? Why? Marcus? No. Marcus barely noticed anything in the medicine cabinet. He used the downstairs bathroom most mornings. Patricia. The thought came unbidden. and I tried to push it away. That was crazy. Paranoid. Exactly the kind of irrational thinking Patricia had been gently suggesting I was prone to. But then again, I hadn't been taking these pills. I'd refused to take them because I didn't believe anxiety was my problem. So switching them would have been pointless unless whoever switched them planned to use them somehow. Or wanted them available. Or I flushed the pill down the toilet, my mind racing. I needed to think clearly, but the fog in my head made it nearly impossible. I closed the medicine cabinet and caught sight of myself in the mirror. Pale, dark circles under my eyes, hair limp and unwashed. I looked sick. I looked unstable. Was I being paranoid? Was this another episode? I went back to my office and sat down at my computer, but I couldn't focus on work. Instead, I found myself Googling symptoms. Headaches, dizziness, brain fog, memory problems, confusion. The results were overwhelming. Everything from brain tumors to vitamin deficiencies to anxiety disorders. But then one search result caught my eye: symptoms of chronic low-dose poisoning. My hands hovered over the keyboard. This was insane. I was being insane. But I clicked it anyway. The article described various substances and their effects when administered in small doses over time. Some caused neurological symptoms. Some caused gastrointestinal issues. Some caused both. One section made me stop breathing. Many poisons can mimic mental health conditions, causing victims to appear unstable or irrational. Historically, this has been used as a method of gaslighting, particularly in domestic situations where the victim's credibility is already compromised. I slammed my laptop shut, heart hammering. This was paranoid thinking. Delusional thinking. Exactly what Patricia had been warning Marcus about. But what if it wasn't? I opened my laptop again and began searching with a new focus: how to test for poisoning at home. Most results were unhelpful. Articles about carbon monoxide detectors or lead paint tests. But then I found a forum for people concerned about toxic exposure. One poster described using drug testing strips that could detect various substances in food or drink. 20 minutes later, I'd ordered an at-home toxicology test kit with overnight shipping, using a credit card I'd kept from before my marriage. The one Patricia didn't know about. I cleared my search history, then sat back in my chair, trembling. Either I was losing my mind and about to waste $150 on a useless test kit, or I was married to a man whose mother was poisoning me. I didn't know which possibility terrified me more. That night, Marcus came home just after 10:30. I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. I heard him moving quietly around the bedroom, the rustle of clothes as he undressed, the running water in the bathroom. Then he slipped into bed beside me, smelling of cologne and something else. Perfume, maybe. Floral and definitely not mine. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing even. He didn't touch me, didn't try to wake me. Within minutes, I heard his breathing deepen into sleep. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind churning. When had Marcus started pulling away? When had our marriage shifted from partnership to this strange, cold distance? We'd been so happy in the beginning. He'd pursued me with flowers and elaborate dates, told me I was different from all the other women he'd dated. His mother had been the only cloud over our early relationship, making little comments about my lack of pedigree, my bohemian career, my unsuitable background. But Marcus had seemed to find my differences charming then. When had that changed? 6 months ago, I realized. Right around the time Patricia moved in. The next morning, I woke to find Marcus already gone again. But this time, I didn't go downstairs right away. I waited until I heard Patricia's footsteps descend the main staircase, heard the familiar sounds of her morning routine in the kitchen below. Then I went to her room. I'd never been in Patricia's suite uninvited. The entire wing had been redecorated when she moved in. She'd hired contractors and interior designers, all at Marcus's expense. The result was a space that felt more like a high-end hotel than someone's home. Everything was cream and gold and crystal, expensive and cold. My heart pounded as I slipped inside her bedroom. I didn't know what I was looking for. Evidence, maybe. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Her bathroom was immaculate, smelling of expensive French perfume. I opened the medicine cabinet carefully, noting the various prescription bottles, heart medication. She'd said, though I noticed most were for anxiety and sleep aids. Nothing suspicious. I moved to her bedroom, checking drawers with shaking hands. Silk scarves, expensive jewelry, family photos that featured Marcus at various ages, but never me. Not a single photo of Marcus and me together, even though we'd been married for 2 years. I was about to give up when I noticed the locked drawer in her writing desk. It was a small desk positioned under the window, antique mahogany with brass handles. All the drawers opened easily except the bottom, right one.
Locked.
I stood there, staring at it, knowing I should leave. Knowing this was a violation of privacy, possibly illegal, definitely crossing a line I could never uncross. I picked the lock with a bobby pin. It was easier than I expected. The lock was old, more decorative than functional. The drawer slid open with barely a whisper of sound. Inside were papers, medical journals, and in the very back, a small wooden box. I pulled out the box with trembling hands and opened it. Inside were 5 small glass vials, each labeled with a typed label. The handwriting was clinical, precise. 4 of the vials were empty, but one was still half full of white powder. The label read, thallium sulfate. I didn't need to Google it. I'd seen enough crime documentaries to know what thallium was. A poison. Historically used in rat poison, now heavily restricted because of its toxicity and its ability to mimic other illnesses. Symptoms of thallium poisoning: hair loss, numbness, confusion, neurological problems, gastrointestinal issues. I looked at the label again, and this time I noticed something else. A second label underneath the first, partially torn away, but still legible. S. Brooks, progressive dosing. S. Brooks. Sienna Brooks. My name. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the vial. I carefully placed it back in the box, my mind reeling. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't mental illness. This was real. Patricia Whitmore had been poisoning me. The question was, why? And for how long? I heard footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the box back in the drawer, pushed it closed, and bolted for the door. I made it into the hallway just as Patricia appeared at the top of the stairs, carrying a basket of fresh laundry. Oh, she startled, pressing a hand to her chest. Sienna, dear, what are you doing up here? My mind raced. I was looking for you. I thought I heard something. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Something? A noise. From your room. I thought maybe you'd fallen or... I trailed off, hoping I sounded convincing. Patricia's expression smoothed into concern. How sweet of you to worry. But as you can see, I'm perfectly fine. Are you feeling all right? You look pale. Just a headache, I managed. Of course you do, poor thing. She moved past me toward her suite. Why don't you go lie down? I'll bring you some tea.
Tea.
Always tea. No, I said too quickly.
No tea.
I think I'll just take some aspirin. I fled downstairs, my heart trying to pound its way out of my chest. In the safety of my office, I locked the door and sat down at my desk, trying to process what I'd found. Patricia was poisoning me. Systematically, progressively, with a substance designed to make me appear mentally unstable. The headaches, the confusion, the memory problems, all symptoms of thallium poisoning. She'd been doing this for months, maybe longer.
But why?
The answer came to me slowly, piece by piece. Marcus's increasing distance. His concerns about my mental health, fed to him by his mother. The way Patricia positioned herself as the stable, reliable one while I spiraled. If I became unstable enough, if I had to be hospitalized or committed, Marcus would have grounds for divorce. Or worse, for having me declared incompetent. And everything I had, the small inheritance from my parents, my business, my rights, would be gone. And Patricia would have her son all to herself again. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Working late again. Don't wait up. I stared at the message, wondering if he knew. Was he part of this? Or was Patricia manipulating him too, feeding him lies about my mental state while slowly destroying me from the inside? I wanted to believe Marcus was innocent. But he'd been so distant lately, so willing to believe his mother's version of events over mine. The doorbell rang downstairs. I heard Patricia answer it, heard the delivery person's greeting. My toxicology test kit had arrived. I waited until Patricia returned to the kitchen, then crept downstairs and grabbed the package from the front hall table. Back in my office, I locked the door and opened the kit with shaking hands. It contained test strips for various substances, including heavy metals. Instructions were included for testing food, drinks, or other materials. I had plenty of materials to test. That night, I faked taking my anxiety medication when Patricia brought it to me with dinner. I palmed the pill and flushed it later, then used one of the test strips on it. Positive for lorazepam. Not the sertraline I'd been prescribed. I tested the chamomile tea Patricia had insisted I drink every morning for the past 6 months. The test strip changed color immediately. Positive for thallium. I tested the honey she used in my tea, the special, organic honey she'd brought from her own apartment and insisted was better for my headaches. Positive for thallium. I sat on the bathroom floor, surrounded by positive test strips, and finally let myself cry. Not from fear or sadness, but from rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Patricia Whitmore had been systematically poisoning me for 6 months, convincing my husband I was mentally unstable, isolating me from my work and my life. She'd been turning me into a ghost in my own home. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd left the evidence where I could find it. I wiped my eyes and stood up, looking at myself in the mirror. I still looked sick, pale, fragile. But now I knew why. And more importantly, I knew it was temporary. Thallium poisoning was reversible if caught early enough. I'd stop drinking the tea, stop taking anything Patricia gave me, and my body would recover. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Because Patricia Whitmore thought she was so much smarter than me. She thought I was just some orphan nobody who'd gotten lucky marrying her precious son. She thought I was weak, broken, easily controlled. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I gathered all the test strips, photographed them with dates and labels, and stored them in a locked box in my office. Then I photographed the vials in Patricia's drawer when she went out for her weekly tennis match, making sure to capture the labels clearly. I had proof. Now I needed a plan. That night, when Patricia brought me my evening tea, I smiled and thanked her warmly. "You're always so thoughtful, Patricia," I said, wrapping my hands around the cup. "Of course, dear. Anything for family." Her smile was pure poison. I raised the cup to my lips, made a show of drinking, then set it down. "Actually, I'm not very thirsty right now. Maybe I'll drink it later." Something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance? Suspicion? "You really should drink it while it's hot, sweetheart. It's much more effective that way." Effective. Interesting word choice. "I will," I promised. In just a bit. After she left, I poured the tea down the sink and rinsed the cup thoroughly. Then I sat down at my computer and began to plan. Patricia thought she was playing chess while I stumbled around the board like a confused pawn. But she was about to discover that I knew exactly what game we were playing. And I was going to win. The next few days were the hardest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal while every cell in my body screamed to run, to confront, to expose the monster living in my home. But I knew that rushing in without a solid plan would be disastrous. Patricia had been building her narrative for months. The unstable daughter-in-law, the concerned mother-in-law, the worried son. If I accused her without irrefutable proof, I'd only confirm their story. So I played along. I drank the tea Patricia brought me, or pretended to. I developed a system. I'd take the cup with gratitude, wait until she left the room, then pour it into a thermos I kept hidden in my desk drawer. Later, I'd pour it down the toilet in small amounts so the sound wouldn't be suspicious. The thermos was now filled with enough poison tea to test multiple times if needed. I stopped eating anything Patricia prepared unless Marcus was also eating it. I claimed my stomach was sensitive and I needed bland foods. Patricia's lips would thin with displeasure, but she couldn't object without seeming unreasonable. Within 3 days of avoiding the tea and tainted food, I started to feel different. The fog in my head began to lift, slowly at first, like clouds burning off in morning sun. The headaches became less frequent. My hands stopped shaking quite so much. Patricia noticed. "You seem better, dear," she said one morning, watching me with those calculating eyes. More alert. I think the anxiety medication is finally working, I lied smoothly. I've been taking it regularly, like you suggested. A slight frown creased her forehead. She knew I hadn't been taking it. She'd probably been checking the bottle. But she couldn't call me out without revealing that she'd been monitoring my medication. That's wonderful, sweetheart, she said finally. Though you know, sometimes improvement is temporary. These things can come in waves. A threat. She was threatening me. I'll keep that in mind, I said, meeting her eyes steadily. That afternoon, while Patricia was at her weekly massage appointment, I called my old college roommate, Jenna Chin. Jenna was a family law attorney now, working for a prestigious firm in downtown Chicago. We drifted apart after I married Marcus, another relationship Patricia had subtly undermined with comments about Jenna being too career-focused and not really your type of friend anymore. Sienna. Jenna's warm voice was like a lifeline. Oh my God, it's been forever. How are you? Hearing her voice, I nearly broke down. But I steadied myself. Jenna, I need legal advice. Can we meet somewhere private? There was a pause. Then, in a different tone, are you safe right now?
Yes.
But I need help. Starbucks on Sherman Avenue. 1 hour. I met her there in a back corner booth and told her everything. I showed her the photographs of the vials, the test results, the documentation I'd been secretly gathering. Jenna's face grew paler and paler as I spoke. Jesus Christ, Sienna, she breathed when I finished. This is attempted murder. You need to go to the police right now. Will they believe me? I asked. Patricia was a psychiatric nurse. She has medical credentials. She's been building a narrative about my mental instability for months, and Marcus. My voice cracked. Marcus believes her, not me. Jenna reached across the table and grabbed my hands. Then we make them believe you. We document everything. We get you to a doctor who can test for thallium in your system, and we build a case so airtight that Patricia Whitmore can't lie her way out of it. I have a better idea, I said quietly. What if we let her think she's winning? Jenna's eyes widened as I explained my plan. That evening, I put on a performance worthy of an Oscar. I came downstairs for dinner pale and shaking, claiming I'd had another episode while working. I'd knocked over my water glass, I said, and couldn't remember doing it. Marcus looked concerned. Patricia looked satisfied. Perhaps we should make that appointment with Dr. Richardson, Patricia suggested gently. Dr. Richardson was a psychiatrist she knew from her nursing days at St. Catherine's. He's excellent with cases like yours. Cases like mine, I repeated dully, playing the part of the confused, deteriorating wife. Your mother might be right, Marcus said. And something in his tone made my heart clench. He really believed I was falling apart. We just want you to get better, C.
Z.
The old nickname from when we were dating. When had he stopped using it regularly? Okay, I whispered, letting my voice break. Whatever you think is best. Patricia squeezed my shoulder, her touch making my skin crawl. That's my good girl. After dinner, I excused myself early, claiming exhaustion. In the safety of my locked office, I opened my laptop and continued my research. I'd been learning everything I could about thallium poisoning, about medical gaslighting, about the legal precedents for cases like mine. I'd also been learning about Patricia. Her past wasn't as pristine as she pretended. Using my graphic design connections, I'd reached out to someone who owed me a favor. A private investigator named Tom Russo, who I'd done branding work for when he started his business. Tom had been digging into Patricia's background. His email arrived that night. You were right to be suspicious. Check the attachments. The attachments were explosive. Patricia had been fired from St. Catherine's, not retired as she claimed. The reason? Accusations of medication tampering. A patient had nearly died from an incorrect drug dosage that Patricia had administered. The hospital had hushed it up to avoid a lawsuit, but Tom had found the records. There was more. Patricia's husband, Marcus's father, had died 10 years ago from what was ruled a heart attack. But according to Tom's digging, there had been questions at the time. Strange symptoms before his death. A doctor who'd wanted an autopsy but been overruled by Patricia, who'd insisted on immediate cremation for religious reasons. Marcus had been 22 when his father died, away at law school. He'd come home for the funeral, devastated, and Patricia had been the grieving widow who needed him. who'd become increasingly dependent on him over the years. I stared at the documents on my screen, feeling sick. Had Patricia killed her own husband? Had Marcus been her victim too, just in a different way? My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, still at office. Don't wait up. Love you. Did he love me? Or had Patricia spent the past 6 months slowly eroding whatever feelings he'd had, replacing love with doubt and pity and obligation? I needed to know where Marcus stood. I needed to know if my husband was complicit, or if he was just another one of Patricia's victims. The next morning, I made my move. I came downstairs early, before Patricia was awake, and found Marcus in the kitchen making coffee. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes. He'd been working late every night for weeks. Hey, I said softly. He turned, surprised.
Z.
You're up early. I wanted to catch you before you left. I moved closer, noting how he stiffened slightly. When had my presence started making him uncomfortable? Marcus, can we talk? Really talk.
About what?
About us. About everything. I let my voice tremble. I feel like I'm losing you. Like you don't trust me anymore. Something flickered across his face. Guilt? Pain? See, it's not about trust. It's about your health. You've been so different lately, and I'm worried. Your mother is worried. I interrupted gently. You're just listening to her. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. She's a medical professional. She knows the signs. Signs of what, Marcus? What exactly does she think is wrong with me? She thinks. He ran a hand through his hair. She thinks you might be having some kind of mental health crisis. The forgetfulness, the mood swings, finding your phone in weird places. See, last week you left the stove on. You could have burned the house down. I had no memory of leaving the stove on. Because I hadn't. But I couldn't prove that. Do you believe her? I asked. Or, do you believe me when I say I don't remember these things happening? He looked genuinely torn. I don't know what to believe anymore. And there it was. Patricia had won this round. She'd successfully driven a wedge between us, made my husband doubt his own wife. But she hadn't won yet. Okay, I said quietly. I'll see Dr. Richardson. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm okay. Marcus's expression softened. He reached out and touched my cheek. Thank you. I just want my wife back. I leaned into his touch, fighting back tears. I'm right here, Marcus. I've been here the whole time. After he left, I stood in the empty kitchen and let myself cry. Not from fear or sadness, but from rage and grief. Rage at Patricia for what she'd done, grief for the marriage that might already be destroyed. But I wasn't giving up. Patricia came downstairs an hour later, already dressed and perfect. Good morning, dear. You're up early. I couldn't sleep, I said truthfully. Patricia, I think you and Marcus are right. I need help. I want to see Dr. Richardson. Her smile was triumphant.
Oh, sweetheart.
That's so brave of you to admit. I'm proud of you. I'm scared, I whispered, and that was true too. Just not for the reasons she thought. She pulled me into a hug, and I forced myself not to recoil. Don't be frightened. We're going to take care of you. Everything is going to be fine. Over her shoulder, I caught sight of myself in the hall mirror. I looked small and scared and broken. But my eyes were clear and sharp and calculating. Let Patricia think she'd won. Let her believe I was finally breaking. Because while she was busy celebrating her victory, I was building my trap. And when it closed, there would be no escape. The appointment with Dr. Richardson was scheduled for the following Thursday. Patricia made the call herself, insisting she needed to speak with him privately first to provide context. I sat in the living room, pretending to read a magazine while listening to her half of the conversation through the open door. Yes, doctor, that's right. Progressive deterioration over the past 6 months. Memory issues, mood instability, paranoid thinking. No family history that we know of, but the poor thing is an orphan, so it's hard to say. Yes, I understand. Thursday at 2 would be perfect. She hung up and came back into the living room, her face arranged in an expression of compassionate concern. All set, sweetheart. Dr. Richardson is looking forward to meeting you. He's one of the best. Thank you, Patricia, I said softly, keeping my eyes downcast. The magazine in my hands was shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of controlling my rage. Why don't I make you some tea? You look tense. No, thank you. My stomach's been upset. A flash of irritation crossed her face, quickly masked. You really should drink something, dear. You need to keep your strength up. Maybe later, I said, standing. I think I'll go lie down. I retreated to my office and locked the door, then pulled out my phone. I had a text from Jenna. Documents ready. Meeting tomorrow? I typed back.
Yes.
Same place, 11 a.m. Then I opened my laptop and reviewed the plan we developed. It was risky, requiring perfect timing and nerves of steel. But it was the only way to expose Patricia in a manner that would leave no room for doubt, no way for her to talk her way out of what she'd done. The next morning, I met Jenna at a different coffee shop, this one in Lincoln Park, far from Evanston. She slid a folder across the table to me. This is everything, she said quietly. Affidavits from Tom about what he found in Patricia's background. Medical records request forms. A draft restraining order. And this. She pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. This is a recording device. Illinois is a two-party consent state for recording, but there's an exception for documenting crimes in progress. What Patricia is doing to you is attempted murder. You have the right to gather evidence. I took the pen, turning it over in my hands. How does it work? Click the top once to start recording, twice to stop. It'll record for up to 8 hours on a single charge. Everything saves to an encrypted cloud server that only you and I can access. Jenna's expression was fierce. Sienna, I want you to be careful. If Patricia suspects what you're doing, she won't. I interrupted. She thinks I'm broken. She thinks she's one. Has Marcus. Jenna trailed off, but I knew what she was asking. I don't know if he's involved or just manipulated, I said honestly. Part of me wants to believe he's innocent. But Jenna, he's been so distant. He believes everything Patricia tells him about me. Even if he's not actively helping her, he's not helping me either. Jenna reached across and squeezed my hand. Then we protect you first, and we figure out Marcus later. Are you sure you want to go through with this? We could go to the police right now with what we have, and they'd see a mentally unstable woman making wild accusations about her mother-in-law, a respected former medical professional. I finished.
No.
We do this my way. We let Patricia think she's pushing me toward a breakdown, and we record everything. Then, when we have enough, we bury her. The look in Jenna's eyes was part admiration, part concern. You've changed, she said softly. The Sienna I knew in college never would have been this calculating. The Sienna you knew in college hadn't been systematically poisoned by her husband's mother, I replied. People change when they're fighting for their lives. That afternoon, I went home and began setting up my recording system. The pen went into my pocket. I also borrowed a nanny cam from Jenna, a small device disguised as a phone charger that I plugged in near the kitchen table, angled to capture the morning tea ritual. Then I did something that made my hands shake. I called my doctor and made an appointment for a full toxicology screening. I needed official medical documentation of the thallium in my system. But I couldn't go to my regular doctor. Patricia might find out. Instead, I found a clinic in the South Loop, paid cash, and scheduled an appointment under my maiden name. The medical techs drew what felt like gallons of blood. Results in 3 to 5 business days, the nurse told me. We'll call you at the number you provided. I'd given them Jenna's office number. Thursday arrived faster than I wanted. Marcus took the morning off work to drive me to Dr. Richardson's office, a gesture that might have touched me if I didn't know Patricia had orchestrated it. She came too, of course, sitting in the back seat like a chaperone. Dr. Richardson's office was in a medical building near Northwestern University. The waiting room was done in soothing blues and grays, with abstract art on the walls and classical music playing softly. Marcus sat beside me, his hand on my knee, while Patricia flipped through a magazine. Sienna Brooks? A young woman in scrubs appeared in the doorway. I stood, and Marcus started to stand with me. But Dr. Richardson himself appeared behind the nurse, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Whitmore, he said, nodding to Marcus and Patricia. Why don't you wait here? I'd like to speak with Sienna alone first. Patricia's smile tightened. Oh, but I thought I could provide some context. I have your notes from our phone conversation. Dr. Richardson interrupted smoothly. Very thorough. But I always conduct initial evaluations privately. Standard practice. There was nothing she could say to that without looking controlling. Patricia settled back into her chair with a tight nod. Of course, doctor. I followed him into his office, my heart pounding. The recording pen was in my cardigan pocket. I didn't dare turn it on. Not here, not with a psychiatrist who might notice such things. Dr. Richardson gestured for me to sit in a comfortable armchair, then took the seat across from me rather than behind his desk.
So, Sienna.
Your mother-in-law is quite concerned about you. Yes, I said carefully. She described some troubling symptoms. Memory problems, confusion, mood swings. She mentioned an incident with a stove being left on. I don't remember leaving the stove on, I said truthfully. I don't remember a lot of the things Patricia says I've done. He made a note. And that concerns you? Of course it concerns me. Wouldn't it concern you if people told you that you did things you have no memory of doing? It would, he agreed. His eyes were shrewd, assessing. Tell me about your relationship with your mother-in-law. The question surprised me. I'd expected him to focus on my symptoms, my mental state. It's complicated. How so? I chose my words carefully. Patricia has very definite ideas about how things should be done. She moved in 6 months ago, and since then, she's been very involved in my life, in our marriage. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, I met his eyes. I feel suffocated. I feel like I'm being watched and judged constantly. I feel like nothing I do is good enough. Dr. Richardson was quiet for a moment, studying me. Then, he said something that made my heart skip a beat. Sienna, has anyone told you that you don't seem mentally unstable to me? I stared at him. What? You're articulate, coherent. Your affect is appropriate to the situation. Your speech patterns are normal. You show no signs of psychosis, dissociation, or cognitive impairment. He leaned forward slightly. Which makes me wonder why your mother-in-law was so insistent that you were experiencing a mental health crisis. Tears sprang to my eyes, real ones this time. You believe me? I believe that something is happening to you, he said carefully. Whether that something is medical, psychological, or environmental remains to be seen. But I don't see evidence of the severe mental deterioration Mrs. Whitmore described. He paused. However, I do see signs of significant stress. You're underweight, you have dark circles under your eyes, and your hands have been trembling since you sat down. I've been sick, I whispered. Headaches, dizziness, confusion. But the tests my regular doctor ran came back normal. What tests? Blood work, MRI, basic metabolic panel. Did anyone test for toxins? Heavy metals. The room seemed to tilt. Why would you ask that? Dr. Richardson's expression was grave. Because I've been a psychiatrist for 35 years, and I've learned that when a patient presents with symptoms that don't quite match any psychiatric diagnosis, when there's a concerned family member pushing very hard for a specific conclusion, and when the patient themselves seems confused about their own behavior, sometimes we're looking at the wrong kind of problem entirely. I couldn't breathe. What kind of problem? That's not my area of expertise, he said. But I have a colleague, Dr. Sarah Patel, who specializes in toxicology and environmental medicine. If you're willing, I'd like to refer you to her. She can run more specialized tests. Patricia won't like that, I said without thinking. Why would Patricia's opinion matter when it comes to your medical care? It was such a simple question, but it hit me like a sledgehammer. Why did Patricia's opinion matter? Why had I let her dictate so much of my life? I'll see Dr. Patel, I said firmly. But please don't tell Patricia about the referral. Tell her you want to see me again, that you need more time to evaluate me. Dr. Richardson's eyes narrowed slightly. Sienna, are you safe at home? The question hung in the air between us. Was I safe? I had a woman actively poisoning me living under the same roof, a husband who believed her over me, and no family to turn to. I'm handling it, I said finally. But I need time. I need people to keep thinking I'm just sick.
Confused. Can you help me with that?
He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll tell them that I want to see you twice a week for the next month, that I'm concerned but optimistic, that these things take time. Will that give you what you need? Yes, I breathed. Thank you. Sienna, he said seriously. If you're in danger, I'm gathering evidence. I interrupted. I have a lawyer. I have a plan. I just need a little more time. When I came out of the office, Marcus and Patricia both stood up. Well? Patricia asked, her voice sharp with poorly concealed anxiety. Dr. Richardson emerged behind me. I'd like to see Sienna twice a week for ongoing evaluation and therapy. These situations require time and careful attention. What's your initial assessment? Marcus asked. It's too early for a definitive diagnosis, Dr. Richardson said smoothly. But I'm cautiously optimistic. Sienna is cooperative and insightful, which is a good sign. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. She'd been hoping for a diagnosis of severe mental illness, I realized. Something that would give Marcus grounds to have me committed or declared incompetent. In the car on the way home, Patricia was unusually quiet. Marcus tried to fill the silence with questions about Dr. Richardson, about how I was feeling, but I could see Patricia's mind working in the rearview mirror. That evening, after Marcus left for a late meeting at the office, Patricia brought me tea again. You must be exhausted, dear. Therapy can be so draining. I took the cup, noting how she watched to make sure I drank it. The recording pen was in my pocket. I clicked it once. Patricia, I said, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Why do you think I'm sick? Really? She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Well, darling, the symptoms. But what if the symptoms have a different cause? What if I'm not mentally ill at all? Something flickered in her eyes. Fear? Anger? Sienna, denial is very common in these cases. I'm not in denial, I interrupted, keeping my voice soft and confused. I'm just trying to understand. You're a medical professional. You worked in psychiatry for years. Wouldn't you want to rule out all physical causes before jumping to a mental health diagnosis? Of course, she said, but her voice had an edge to it. That's why you've had all those tests. Basic tests, I said. But Dr. Richardson mentioned that sometimes psychiatric symptoms can be caused by other things. Toxins, for example. Patricia's hand tightened on her own teacup. Toxins. Heavy metals, chemicals, that sort of thing. I took a small sip of the tea, then set it down. It's interesting, isn't it? How similar the symptoms would be. Sienna, what are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, I said, widening my eyes innocently. I'm just thinking out loud, trying to understand what's happening to me. We stared at each other across the kitchen table. In that moment, I saw her clearly, the calculation behind the concern, the coldness beneath the warmth. She was wondering if I knew, if I suspected. You're overthinking this, dear, she said finally. Drink your tea before it gets cold. You need your rest. I obediently took another small sip, then stood up. You're right. I think I'll go to bed early. Good girl, Patricia said, and the condescension in her voice made my skin crawl. Back in my office, I locked the door and clicked the pen twice to stop recording. Then I uploaded the file to the cloud server Jenna had set up. It wasn't much. Patricia hadn't confessed to anything, but it was a start. A record of her pushing me to drink the poison tea, of her reaction when I mentioned toxins. Over the next week, I recorded everything. Every cup of tea Patricia brought me. Every concerned comment she made to Marcus about my deterioration. Every time she mentioned Dr. Richardson or suggested I was getting worse instead of better. I also continued to avoid the poison. I poured out the tea, refused food that only I would eat, and claimed my stomach was too sensitive for anything heavy. Within a week, I felt clearer than I had in months. The headaches were gone. The fog had lifted. I could think again, really think, without that awful confusion clouding everything. Patricia noticed. I could see it in the way she watched me, in the tightness around her mouth when I moved through the house with more energy and focus. On Tuesday, Jenna called. The toxicology results are back. I closed my office door, my heart pounding, and positive for thallium. Significant levels, consistent with chronic low-dose exposure over several months. Her voice was tight with anger. Sienna, this is proof. We can go to the police right now. Not yet, I said. I need more. I need her on record, Jenna. I need her to implicate herself. How are you going to do that? I'm going to give her what she wants, I said slowly, an idea forming. I'm going to have a breakdown. The plan was risky, but it was the only way I could think of to get Patricia to reveal herself. If I appeared to be spiraling, if I gave her the mentally unstable daughter-in-law she'd been trying to create, she might get careless. She might say something incriminating. On Wednesday evening, I put my plan into action. Marcus was home, working in his study. Patricia was in the living room watching her favorite show. I waited until just the right moment, then I screamed. It was a raw, terrified sound that brought both of them running. They found me in my office, backed into a corner, pointing at my computer screen. "They're watching me," I shouted, letting my voice crack with hysteria. Through the camera. "They've been watching everything."
Who see?
"Who's watching you?" Marcus tried to approach me, but I flinched away. "I don't know. But I can see them. They're right there." I pointed at the blank screen. I'd turned off the monitor before I started screaming. "Can't you see them?" Marcus turned to his mother, his face pale. Patricia's expression was a perfect mask of concern, but I saw the satisfaction in her eyes. "Sienna, honey, there's no one there," Marcus said gently. "Your computer isn't even on." "It is."
It was.
They were watching. I let myself sob, hunching over. "I'm not crazy, I'm not." "Of course you're not crazy," Patricia said soothingly, moving toward me. "You're sick, dear. You need help. Get away from me." I screamed, and the look of triumph on her face was quickly masked. "Marcus, call Dr. Richardson," Patricia said urgently. "She's having a psychotic break. She might hurt herself." No, I moaned, sinking to the floor. "Please, I'm not crazy, I'm not." Marcus was on the phone, his voice shaking. I heard him explaining the situation to Dr. Richardson, heard the panic in his tone. Part of me, the part that still loved my husband, wanted to stop this charade, to tell him the truth, but I couldn't. Not yet. Dr. Richardson, bless him, played along perfectly. "Bring her in tomorrow morning," I heard him say through the phone. "First thing." "But Marcus, she's not in immediate danger. Don't call 911 unless she tries to harm herself or others." After Marcus hung up, Patricia tried to approach me again. "Sienna, let me help you to bed." "Don't touch me," I shrieked. The recording pen was in my pocket, capturing everything. "You want me to go crazy? You want them to lock me up?" "Sweetheart, that's the illness talking. It's not an illness." I let my voice break into sobs. "Something is making me sick. Someone is making me sick." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Who would do such a thing?" "I don't know," I wailed. "But I'm not crazy. I'm being poisoned."
There.
I'd said it. The accusation hung in the air. Marcus knelt down beside me. "See, honey, nobody is poisoning you.
You're sick.
You need help. Your mother," I whispered, looking right at Patricia. "Your mother wants me gone." Patricia's face went white, then red. "How dare you?" she hissed, dropping the concerned act for just a moment. "After everything I've done for you, all the care I've provided, and you accuse me." "Patricia," Marcus said sharply. "She doesn't know what she's saying." But I'd seen it, that flash of genuine rage, quickly controlled. The mask had slipped, just for a second, and the recording pen had caught it all. Patricia took a deep breath, visibly composing herself. "You're right. She's not herself. Marcus, help me get her to bed. She needs rest." Together, they helped me up. I let myself be limp, unresisting, and walked me to the bedroom. Patricia brought me water and 2 pills. "Anxiety medication," she said. "It'll help you sleep." I stared at the pills in her palm. They were white and round, identical to the ones in my prescription bottle. But I knew now that whatever was in that bottle wasn't what my doctor had prescribed.
No, iwis but.
"Sienna?" I said no. I knocked the pills out of her hand, sending them scattering across the floor. Marcus grabbed my wrists gently, but firmly.
Z, please.
"You need to calm down." I collapsed against him, sobbing. Real tears this time because I hated this. I hated manipulating him, hated seeing the fear and confusion in his eyes, hated that Patricia had driven us to this point.
"I'm sorry," he gasped.
"I'm so sorry, Marcus." "Sure, it's okay. We're going to get you help." He held me while I cried, and over his shoulder, I saw Patricia watching us with those cold, calculating eyes. She knew I suspected her, and that made her more dangerous than ever. After they left me alone, supposedly to rest, I pulled out the recording pen and stopped the recording. Then I sent the file to Jenna with a text. Phase 1 complete. Tomorrow we move to Phase 2. Her response was immediate. Be careful. She's going to escalate. I knew Jenna was right. I'd poked the bear. I'd let Patricia know that I suspected her. Even if Marcus didn't believe me, she would either back off, afraid of being caught, or she would double down. I was betting on the latter. People like Patricia didn't give up easily. They didn't back down when challenged. They escalated. I just had to be ready when she did. That night, I barely slept. I kept the recording pen under my pillow and my phone close. I downloaded an app that would start recording audio if it detected raised voices. I'd locked my office and hidden all my evidence in a safe deposit box Jenna had helped me rent. If Patricia tried something tonight, I would be ready. But the night passed quietly. Too quietly. In the morning, Marcus drove me to Dr. Richardson's office again. Patricia stayed home this time. I'd refused to get in the car if she came, and Marcus had reluctantly agreed. In the car, he kept glancing at me with worried eyes. See, last night, you really scared me. I scared myself, I said honestly. Do you really think? He trailed off, then started again. Do you really believe someone is trying to hurt you? It was the opening I'd been waiting for. Marcus, do you love me? Of course I do. Then please just listen. Really listen. I took a deep breath. Something has been wrong for months. You know it has. The headaches, the confusion, all of it. But what if it's not mental illness? What if there's another explanation? Like what? Like someone making me sick on purpose. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's a serious accusation. I know. And I know how it sounds. But Marcus, your mother moved in 6 months ago. And 6 months ago is when I started getting sick. Coincidence. Is it? I turned to face him. She brings me tea every morning. Special tea, she says, for my headaches. But what if there's something in it? See, that's paranoid. Then let me prove it to you. I interrupted. There's tea left over from this morning. Let me have it tested. If I'm wrong, if I'm just being paranoid, then I'll accept whatever diagnosis Dr. Richardson gives me. I'll take the medication, I'll do the therapy, everything. But if I'm right, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. We were at a stoplight, and he turned to look at me. Really look at me, maybe for the first time in months. You seem clearer today, he said slowly. More like yourself. Because I haven't had the tea in over a week, I said. Marcus, I've been avoiding it, and I've been feeling better. Doesn't that seem significant? He didn't answer, but I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. Not belief, not yet, but doubt was a start. At Dr. Richardson's office, I told him everything. About the vials I'd found, about the test results, about my plan to record Patricia. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing graver by the minute. Sienna, this is extremely dangerous, he said when I finished. If what you're saying is true, Patricia has already attempted to murder you. Confronting her, even indirectly, could provoke her into more drastic action. I know, I said, but I need her on record. I need her to implicate herself, or she'll just claim I'm mentally ill and making everything up. The medical evidence can't be explained away. She's a former psychiatric nurse. She can claim I had access to the thallium somehow, that I poisoned myself for attention. It's textbook Munchausen syndrome. I leaned forward. I need more than physical evidence. I need proof of intent. Dr. Richardson was quiet, thinking. Finally, he said, what if I could give you that proof? I stared at him. How? Patricia called me yesterday after your episode. She wanted to discuss having you committed for a psychiatric evaluation. 72-hour hold, possibly longer. His expression was grim. I told her I needed to evaluate you first, but she was very insistent. Almost desperate. Did you record the call? No, but I took detailed notes. And I'm willing to testify about it if necessary. He pulled out a file. I also did some research into Patricia's background. The accusations at St. Catherine's, the questions about her husband's death. Sienna, I think you're dealing with someone who has done this before. A chill ran down my spine. You think she killed Marcus's father? I think it's possible. And I think if we're going to stop her, we need to move quickly. Before she decides that poisoning you slowly isn't working and tries something more direct. He was right. I could feel time running out, could sense Patricia's growing desperation. She knew I suspected her. She knew I'd accused her in front of Marcus. How long before she decided I was too much of a risk to keep alive? What do we do? I asked. Dr. Richardson smiled grimly. We set a trap, and we let Patricia walk right into it. Dr. Richardson's plan was elegant in its simplicity. He would call Patricia and tell her that my condition had worsened, that he was recommending immediate psychiatric hospitalization. But before that could happen, he needed to do a comprehensive evaluation, including a full medical workup to rule out any physical causes. She'll resist the medical tests, I said. She'll say they've already been done. Let her resist, Dr. Richardson replied. Her resistance will be telling. What mother-in-law, genuinely concerned about her daughter-in-law's health, would object to thorough testing? He made the call that afternoon with me sitting in his office. He put it on speaker, so I could hear. Mrs. Whitmore? This is Dr. Richardson. I wanted to update you on Sienna's condition. Patricia's voice came through, honeyed with false concern. Oh, doctor, thank you for calling. How is the poor dear? I'm afraid her symptoms have progressed. The episode last night was quite severe. I'm recommending a 72-hour psychiatric hold for observation and stabilization. A pause. Then, of course, whatever you think is best. When can we arrange this? I'd like to admit her tomorrow morning. But hospital protocol requires a complete medical workup first, full toxicology screen, heavy metal testing, the works. Just to rule out any underlying medical conditions that might be causing psychiatric symptoms. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. When Patricia spoke again, her voice was tight. Is that really necessary? She's had so many tests already. Hospital policy, I'm afraid. We can't admit a patient for psychiatric care without ruling out medical causes first. You understand, with your nursing background, you know how important differential diagnosis is. Of course, Patricia said, but I could hear the strain in her voice. But hasn't her regular doctor already run those tests? Not a comprehensive tox screen. We're looking for everything, heavy metals, environmental toxins, even rare poisons. It's standard procedure for cases presenting like Sienna's. Dr. Richardson's voice was perfectly professional, giving nothing away. I have her here now. We'll run the test this afternoon, and if everything comes back clean, we can proceed with admission tomorrow. This afternoon? Patricia's voice rose slightly. But shouldn't Marcus be there? He gave consent for treatment this morning. Unless you have some objection? Another long pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in Patricia's head. If she objected too strongly, it would look suspicious. But if the tests ran, they would find the thallium. She was trapped. No objection, she said finally. Just keep me informed, doctor. Of course. I'll call you when we have results. After he hung up, Dr. Richardson and I looked at each other.
She knows, I said.
She knows, he agreed. And now we wait to see what she does about it. What Patricia did was show up at Dr. Richardson's office 20 minutes later. The receptionist buzzed his office. Dr. Richardson? Mrs. Whitmore is here. She says it's urgent. He looked at me. Do you want to face her? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to hide, to avoid confrontation. But the stronger part, the part that had been growing stronger every day since I'd found those vials, wanted to look Patricia in the eye. Yes, I said, but I want you here. And I want everything recorded. I pulled out the recording pen and set it on Dr. Richardson's desk, clicking it once. He nodded and pressed his office intercom. Send Mrs. Whitmore in, please. Patricia swept into the office like a force of nature, all false smiles and designer clothes.
Dr.
Richardson, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I simply had to speak with you about Sienna's treatment plan. She stopped short when she saw me sitting there. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw raw fury in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by concern. Sienna, darling, I didn't realize you were still here. How are you feeling? Confused, I said honestly. Dr. Richardson was just explaining the tests he wants to run. Yes, about that. Patricia turned to the doctor, her voice taking on a lecturing tone. I really don't think extensive testing is necessary. As I mentioned on the phone, Sienna has already had comprehensive blood work. Her regular doctor found nothing. Her regular doctor didn't test for heavy metals or toxins, Dr. Richardson said mildly. These are specialized tests that require specific labs. But why would you test for toxins? Patricia's laugh was brittle. That seems rather extreme. Are you suggesting someone is poisoning her? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. I'm suggesting, Dr. Richardson said carefully, that we rule out all medical causes before pursuing psychiatric treatment. It's standard practice, Mrs. Whitmore. Surely you, with your background in nursing, understand the importance of thorough differential diagnosis. Patricia's jaw tightened. Of course I understand. I simply think it's a waste of time and resources when we already know what's wrong with her. And what is wrong with her, in your professional opinion? Early onset schizophrenia, Patricia said firmly. Possibly with paranoid delusions. The symptoms are textbook. Interesting, Dr. Richardson said. I didn't find the symptoms to be particularly textbook. In fact, Sienna presents as quite lucid and rational in our sessions. She has good days and bad days, Patricia said quickly. Yesterday, she was screaming about cameras watching her. She accused me of trying to hurt her. That's not rational behavior. Actually, I said quietly, I accused you of wanting me gone. There's a difference. Patricia's eyes snapped to me. Sienna, you weren't yourself. Wasn't I? I stood up, meeting her gaze. Or was I finally saying what I've been afraid to say for months? That you've never wanted me in this family. That you've been trying to get rid of me since the day Marcus and I got married. That's absurd. Is it? My voice was steady, stronger than I'd felt in months. You moved into our home and took over. You criticized everything I did. You isolated me from my friends. You convinced Marcus that I was unstable. I took a step toward her. And you brought me tea. Every single morning, you brought me tea. Patricia's face had gone white. You're paranoid. This is exactly the kind of delusional thinking. Then let's run the tests, Dr. Richardson interrupted smoothly. Let's put this to rest once and for all. If Sienna's symptoms are purely psychiatric, the tox screen will come back clean. You'll be vindicated, and we can proceed with appropriate treatment. Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She was trapped, and she knew it. If she kept objecting, she'd look suspicious. But if she agreed, the tests would reveal everything. Fine, she said finally, her voice clipped. Run your tests. But I want to be present when you draw the blood. That's not necessary. I insist. Patricia's smile was sharp. As her mother-in-law and her primary caregiver these past months, I have a right to be present. Primary caregiver. The term made my skin crawl, but Dr. Richardson nodded. Of course. Sienna, are you comfortable with that? Yes, I said, even though I wasn't. But I wanted Patricia there. I wanted her to watch as the evidence of her crime was collected. The blood draw was done in Dr. Richardson's office by a phlebotomist from the hospital. Patricia watched every vial being filled, labeled, and sealed. Her hands were clenched, so tight her knuckles were white. How long for results? She asked. 72 hours for the comprehensive panel, the phlebotomist said. Rush processing. 3 days. I had 3 days before the truth became official, before there was irrefutable medical evidence of what Patricia had done. 3 days for Patricia to panic. After the blood was drawn and sent to the lab, Patricia insisted on driving me home. Dr. Richardson looked at me with concern, silently asking if I was safe. I nodded slightly. I had my recording pen. I had Jenna on speed dial. And I needed to see what Patricia would do now that she was cornered. The car ride home was silent. Patricia's hands gripped the steering wheel, her jaw set. I could feel the tension radiating off her in waves. We were almost home when she finally spoke. You've been avoiding the tea, she said. My heart skipped, but I kept my voice level. My stomach's been upset. For over a week? Yes. More silence. Then, you know, Sienna, I've tried very hard to welcome you into this family. I've tried to be patient with your difficulties. But you've made it quite clear that you don't appreciate my efforts. Patricia, let me finish. Her voice was cold now, all pretense of warmth gone. I don't know what game you think you're playing with these accusations, this sudden clarity, this push for medical tests. But you're making a very serious mistake. Am I? Marcus loves me, Patricia said flatly. I'm his mother. I've been in his life for 32 years. You've been around for what, 3? 4? If it comes down to choosing between us, who do you think he'll believe? Maybe he'll believe the truth, I said quietly. Patricia laughed. A harsh sound. The truth? You mean your paranoid delusions about me poisoning you? Sienna, you're going to end up in a psychiatric hospital, and when you do, Marcus will finally be free of this mistake of a marriage. There it was. Not quite a confession, but close. And every word was being recorded. Is that what you want? I asked. For Marcus to be free of me? I want my son to be happy, Patricia said. And you don't make him happy. You never did. We pulled into the driveway of the estate. Patricia turned off the engine and looked at me, her expression hard. Those test results are going to come back clean, Sienna. Because there's nothing to find. It was a lie, and we both knew it. But it told me something important. Patricia thought she could still get away with this. She thought she could somehow interfere with the test results, or discredit them, or convince Marcus they were meaningless. She had no idea I had evidence beyond the medical tests. The recordings, the photographs of her vials, Tom's investigation into her past. She thought I was just a confused, sick woman making wild accusations. She was about to learn otherwise. That evening, Marcus came home early. Patricia had called him, telling him about the medical tests, about my accusations in Dr. Richardson's office. I could hear them talking in low voices in the kitchen while I stayed in my office, supposedly resting. Then Marcus knocked on my door.
Z, can we talk?
I opened the door. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled. Mom told me what happened at the doctor's office. I'm sure she did. See, you accuse her of poisoning you. In front of your psychiatrist. He ran a hand through his hair. Do you understand how serious that is? How crazy that sounds. It sounds crazy, I agreed. But what if it's true? It's not true. See, my mother has been taking care of you for months. She's been worried sick about you. And you repay her by making these insane accusations. Then why did she object to the medical tests? I interrupted. If she has nothing to hide, why would she care if they test my blood? She didn't object. She did, Marcus. Dr. Richardson can confirm it. She tried very hard to talk him out of running a talk screen. I moved closer to him. Why would a former nurse, someone with medical training, object to ruling out medical causes for psychiatric symptoms? Marcus's expression wavered. I don't know. Maybe she thought it was unnecessary, a waste of money. We have money, I said softly. That's never been an issue. So why, Marcus? Why would she care so much about some medical tests? He didn't have an answer. I could see the doubt in his eyes, the first real cracks in his faith in his mother. The results will be back in 3 days, I said. When they come back clean, when there's no evidence of anything wrong, I'll accept whatever treatment Dr. Richardson recommends. I'll take the medication, I'll go to the hospital if I need to. But if they find something, if there's evidence that someone has been poisoning me, will you believe me then? Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. I don't know what to believe anymore, he whispered into my hair. I just want you to be okay. I want us to be okay. So do I said and meant it. Despite everything, despite the distance and the doubt, I still loved this man. I still wanted to save our marriage, if it could be saved. That night, I barely slept. I kept the recording pen under my pillow, and my phone beside me. I'd told Jenna about the blood tests, about Patricia's reaction. She's going to do something, Jenna had warned. She's backed into a corner. Cornered animals are dangerous. Around 3 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Slow, careful footsteps trying to be quiet. I held my breath, my heart pounding. The footsteps stopped outside my door. I heard the doorknob turn slowly. I'd locked it. The doorknob rattled slightly, testing. Then the footsteps retreated. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and texted Jenna. She tried my door. 3 Uhr nachts. The response was immediate. Get out.
Now.
Go to a hotel. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I needed to see this through. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Patricia already in the kitchen. She looked like she hadn't slept either, dark circles under her eyes despite her perfect makeup. Good morning, dear, she said, and there was something in her voice that made my blood run cold. I made your favorite blueberry pancakes. On the counter was a plate of pancakes, still steaming. They looked perfect, golden and fluffy. I could smell the blueberries. I'm not hungry, I said. You need to eat something. You're wasting away. Patricia picked up the plate and brought it to the table.
Sit down.
I insist. There was no warmth in her voice now, no pretense of concern. Just cold command. I said, I'm not hungry. And I said, sit down. Patricia's eyes were hard. You've been avoiding every meal I prepare. You pour out the tea I make you. You refuse to take the medication I bring you. This ends now, Sienna. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice steady. What ends now, Patricia? This ridiculous charade. This pretense that you're getting better, that you're lucid. She moved closer. You're sick, Sienna. Very sick. And you're going to eat these pancakes, take your medication, and accept that you need help. Or what? Or I'll have no choice but to tell Marcus that you've become a danger to yourself and others. That you need immediate hospitalization. Her smile was cruel. Do you think he'll choose you over me? Do you really? I looked at the pancakes on the table. I'd bet everything I owned that they were laced with something, maybe more thallium, maybe something else. Patricia was desperate now, trying one last time to incapacitate me before the test results came back. Okay, I said quietly, sitting down at the table. Patricia's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected me to comply. I picked up the fork and cut into the pancakes, lifted a bite to my lips, saw the satisfaction bloom on Patricia's face. And then Marcus walked into the kitchen.
Z?
Mom, what's going on? I set down the fork. Your mother made me breakfast. She's insisting I eat it. Marcus looked confused. Okay. The thing is, Marcus, I'm not hungry. But Patricia says I have to eat it anyway. That this ends now. I looked up at Patricia. What ends now, Patricia? What exactly are you trying to end? Patricia's face had gone pale. I was simply trying to take care of her. By forcing her to eat? Marcus looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. Mom, what's going on? Nothing is going on. Your wife is being dramatic as usual. But Patricia's voice was strained. I stood up, my decision made. Marcus, I need to tell you something. And I need you to listen, really listen, without interrupting. He nodded slowly. Your mother has been poisoning me. For 6 months, she's been putting thallium in my tea, in my food, in whatever she could get me to consume. That's why I've been sick. That's why I've had headaches and confusion and memory problems. Not because I'm mentally ill, but because I'm being systematically poisoned. Marcus stared at me.
Z.
You said you'd listen. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder where I'd stored all my evidence. These are photos of vials I found in Patricia's room. Thallium sulfate, labeled with my name. These are test results from an independent lab showing thallium in my system. These are recordings of your mother pushing me to drink tea, to take pills that aren't what they're supposed to be, to eat food that makes me sick. I handed him the phone. He took it with shaking hands, his face draining of color as he scrolled through the evidence. And this, I said, pointing at the pancakes, is another attempt. I guarantee if you have those tested, you'll find something that shouldn't be there. Marcus looked up at his mother, his expression shattered. Mom, Patricia's mask was completely gone now. Her face was twisted with rage. She's lying. She's sick and she's trying to turn you against me with fabricated evidence. There's more, I interrupted. Your father didn't die of a heart attack, Marcus. There were questions at the time, questions about his symptoms before he died. Your mother refused an autopsy. She had him cremated immediately. That's not true, Patricia started. It is true, Marcus said hoarsely, still staring at my phone. I remember. I was away at school, and when I came home for the funeral, Dad was already cremated. I thought it was weird, but I was grieving I didn't. He looked up at his mother, and I saw the moment his world shattered. You killed him. You killed Dad. Don't be ridiculous. And now you're trying to kill my wife. Marcus's voice cracked. He dropped the phone, his hands going to his head. Oh my God. Oh my God. See, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know, I said softly, moving to his side. She manipulated both of us. Patricia stood frozen, her back against the counter. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. Marcus, you have to understand. She wasn't right for you. She was never right for you. I was protecting you. Protecting me? Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. You were poisoning my wife. You were trying to make her seem crazy, so I divorce her. You killed my father. How is any of that protecting me? Because you're my son. Patricia screamed, all composure gone. You're mine. Not hers, not anyone else's mine. Your father wanted to send you away to boarding school, wanted to separate us. And her, she pointed a shaking finger at me. She took you away from me. You stopped calling every day. You stopped visiting every week. You chose her over me. That's what people do when they get married, Mom. They put their spouse first.
No.
Patricia was shaking now. I put you first. Always. I gave up everything for you. And you repay me by choosing some nobody over me? C is not a nobody. She's my wife. She was a mistake. Patricia's voice rose to a shriek. A mistake I was fixing. In another month, she would have been so confused, so sick, that you'd have had to put her in an institution. And then we could have been together again, just us, the way it's supposed to be. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia seemed to realize what she'd just said, how completely she'd confessed. Her hand went to her mouth, her eyes wide. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police.
No.
Patricia lunged for him, but I stepped between them. Don't, I said coldly. It's over, Patricia. She looked at me with pure hatred. You've ruined everything. No, I said. You did that yourself. Marcus was on the phone with 911, his voice shaking as he reported what had happened. Patricia stood there, still and silent, watching her perfect world crumble around her. The police arrived within 10 minutes. Marcus had to tell them everything twice before they seemed to believe it. They collected the pancakes as evidence. They went upstairs with me to Patricia's room, and I showed them the locked drawer, now empty. Patricia must have moved the vials during the night. But it didn't matter. I had photographs. I had recordings. I had medical evidence that would be official in 2 more days. Patricia was arrested. They put her in handcuffs while she maintained an eerie silence, all the rage drained out of her, leaving only a hollow shell. As they led her past me toward the door, she stopped and looked me in the eye. You'll never be enough for him, she whispered. Never. Maybe not, I said, but at least I'll be alive to try. After they took her away, Marcus and I stood in the empty kitchen. The pancakes were gone, bagged as evidence. The tea set Patricia had brought from her apartment sat on the counter, innocent-looking and deadly. I'm so sorry, Marcus said, his voice breaking.
See, I am so sorry.
I should have believed you. I should have seen. You couldn't have known, I said, but there was a distance between us now that I didn't know how to bridge. He'd chosen his mother over me, again and again. Yes, he'd been manipulated. Yes, Patricia was a master at deception. But he'd still made those choices. What happens now? He asked. I looked around the kitchen, at the estate that had never felt like home, at the man I'd married who suddenly seemed like a stranger. Now, I said slowly, we figure out if there's anything left to save. The next 48 hours were a blur of police interviews, medical appointments, and lawyers. Jenna came immediately when I called, bringing with her a criminal attorney named David Chen who specialized in attempted murder cases. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen, David said, reviewing all my evidence. The recordings, the physical evidence, the medical documentation, and her confession in front of witnesses. Patricia Whitmore is going to prison for a very long time. The official toxicology results came back that Friday. Dr. Richardson called me personally. Sienna, the levels of thallium in your system are significant. Another month or 2 of exposure, and we'd be looking at permanent neurological damage, possibly death. I sat down heavily. I'd known, intellectually, that Patricia had been trying to kill me. But hearing it confirmed by a medical professional made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The good news, Dr. Richardson continued, is that thallium is eliminatable. Your body is already clearing it now that you're not being exposed. You'll need chelation therapy to speed up the process, and we'll monitor you closely, but you should make a full recovery. How long? I asked. 6 months, maybe a year for all symptoms to completely resolve. But you should start feeling significantly better within a few weeks. After I hung up, I sat in my office, the one room in the estate that had always felt like mine, and let myself cry. Not from sadness or fear, but from relief. I was going to live. I was going to be okay. Marcus found me there. He'd been staying home from work, hovering anxiously, trying to help but not knowing how.
Z?
The police called. They want us to come down to the station. Patricia's being arraigned tomorrow. I wiped my eyes and looked up at him. Do you want me to be there? I want. He trailed off, then started again. I don't know what I want. She's my mother. She's a monster. Both those things are true, and I don't know how to reconcile them. You don't have to reconcile them, I said quietly. You just have to decide what you're going to do about it. We went to the police station together. Detective Morrison, the lead investigator, walked us through what they'd found. Patricia's room had been searched thoroughly. While the vials were gone, they'd found traces of thallium in her bathroom sink, on her clothing, even under her fingernails. She tried to clean up after herself, Morrison said, but she wasn't thorough enough. We also found her research, printed articles about thallium poisoning, how to administer it, how to make it look like mental illness. She'd been planning this for a long time. How long? Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. Morrison consulted his notes. Based on her search history and purchases, we think she started planning about 6 weeks before she moved in with you. The first thallium purchase was made 7 months ago. 7 months. Patricia had been planning to poison me before she'd even moved into our home. The heart scare that required her to live with us had been fabricated, a way to get close enough to execute her plan. There's something else, Morrison said, his expression grave. We've opened an investigation into your father's death, Mr. Whitmore. The circumstances are suspicious enough that we're recommending exhumation. Marcus went white. He was cremated. We know, but there are medical records, tissue samples from his autopsy. There wasn't an autopsy, Marcus interrupted. Actually, there was a preliminary one, before your mother refused further investigation. Morrison pulled out a file. The pathologist noted several irregularities that were consistent with thallium poisoning, but without your mother's cooperation, he couldn't pursue it. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. I need air. He walked out of the room. I moved to follow, but Morrison stopped me. Mrs. Whitmore, let him process this. He just found out his mother has been a murderer for years. I know, I said, but he's still my husband. I found Marcus outside the police station, sitting on the steps with his head in his hands. I sat down beside him, not touching, just present. She killed my father, he said finally. She killed him, and I've been defending her, trusting her, believing her for 10 years. And then she tried to kill you, and I almost let her. You didn't know. I should have known. His voice cracked. See, there were signs. Looking back, there were so many signs. The way she talked about you, the way she undermined you constantly, the way she seemed almost happy when you got sick. And I ignored all of it because she's my mother, and I trusted her. She was good at manipulation, Marcus. She fooled everyone. Not you, he said bitterly. You figured it out. Only because I was dying, I pointed out. When someone is slowly killing you, you pay attention. We sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus said, I don't blame you. If you want a divorce. The word hung between us, heavy and final. Do you want a divorce? I asked.
No. God, no.
See, I love you. I've loved you since the day we met. But I failed you in the worst possible way. I chose my mother over you, again and again. I let her poison you while I stood by, and did nothing. His voice broke. How can you ever forgive me for that? I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I'm angry and hurt, and I don't know if I can trust you again. But Marcus, I also know that Patricia manipulated you your entire life. She killed your father, and made you dependent on her. You were a victim too. That doesn't excuse. It doesn't excuse, I agreed. But it explains. And maybe, with time and therapy and work, it's something we can heal from. He looked at me, hope and despair warring in his eyes. Do you think we can? Really? I don't know, I said again. But I think we can try. Patricia's arraignment was the next day. Marcus and I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched as she was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. She looked smaller somehow, diminished without her designer clothes and perfect hair. The charges were read: attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit fraud, and, pending the investigation, murder in the death of Robert Whitmore, Marcus's father. Patricia pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit, argued for bail. My client is a respected former nurse with ties to the community and no prior criminal record. The prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, the defendant systematically poisoned her daughter-in-law for 6 months with the intent to kill. She has already demonstrated extreme danger to others and a willingness to commit violence to get what she wants. We strongly oppose bail. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, reviewed the evidence briefly. Bail is denied. Trial is set for, she consulted her calendar, March 15th. Defendant will remain in custody until that time. Patricia's head snapped up. Your Honor, please. I'm not a flight risk. You're a demonstrated danger to society, Mrs. Whitmore. Bailiff, remove the defendant. As Patricia was led away, she turned and looked directly at Marcus. For a moment, I saw the mother he'd known, the woman who'd raised him, who'd packed his lunches and attended his soccer games and told him she loved him. Then her expression hardened and she mouthed 2 words. You'll regret this. Marcus flinched as if she'd struck him. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Someone had leaked the story. Former nurse poisons daughter-in-law, possibly killed her own husband. It was sensational, the kind of story that dominated news cycles. Jenna shepherded us through the crowd, refusing to let us comment. But one reporter's voice carried over the others. Mr. Whitmore, do you believe your mother is guilty? Marcus stopped. Jenna tried to pull him along, but he turned to face the cameras. My mother, he said clearly, is a murderer. She killed my father 10 years ago, and she tried to kill my wife. Yes, I believe she's guilty. And I hope she spends the rest of her life in prison for what she's done. The reporters erupted with questions, but Jenna got us to the car and away before Marcus could say anything else. That wasn't smart, Jenna said as we drove away. Now, they're going to make you part of the story. I don't care, Marcus said. I'm done protecting her. I'm done pretending she's anything other than what she is. Over the next few weeks, I started chelation therapy to remove the thallium from my system. The treatments left me exhausted, but Dr. Richardson was right. I could feel myself getting better. The fog that had clouded my mind for months continued to lift. The headaches became less frequent. I started to feel like myself again. Marcus and I started couples therapy with a counselor who specialized in trauma. It was hard, painful work. There were sessions where I raged at him for not believing me, for choosing his mother, for being so blind. There were sessions where he broke down, grieving the mother he'd thought he had, mourning the father he'd lost twice. But slowly, incrementally, we started to heal. One evening, about a month after Patricia's arrest, Marcus came into my office. I have something to show you, he said. He handed me a folder. Inside were real estate listings, condos and houses in different neighborhoods around Chicago. What is this? I asked. I'm selling the estate, he said. I can't live here anymore. Every room reminds me of her, of what she did, of what I almost lost. He sat down across from me. I know you never felt at home here. So, I thought maybe we could find a place together. Something that's ours, not my family's. I looked through the listings. Modern condos in Lincoln Park, historic brownstones in Wicker Park, houses with backyards in Oak Park. What about this one? I pointed to a Victorian in Evanston, smaller than the estate but with beautiful original details and a sun-filled studio space perfect for design work. Marcus looked at it, then at me. Do you want to stay in Evanston? After everything that happened here? Evanston didn't poison me, I said. Your mother did. And she's gone now. Yeah, Marcus said quietly.
She is.
We sat in silence for a moment. Then I said, Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Anything. When did you start to doubt her? Really doubt her?
He thought about it.
In the car, when you asked me to have the tea tested. You were so clear, so rational. And I realized I hadn't heard you sound that lucid in months.
He looked at me.
That's when I started to wonder if maybe the problem wasn't you. But you didn't say anything.
No.
And I hate myself for that.
His voice was thick.
I was a coward, see. I didn't want to believe my mother was capable of something so evil. So I told myself you were sick because that was easier than facing the truth. And now I know better. Now I know that evil doesn't always look like evil. Sometimes it looks like love. Sometimes it looks like protection. Sometimes it wears pearls and makes you tea and tells you it's all for your own good. I reached across the desk and took his hand. It was the first time I'd initiated physical contact since Patricia's arrest. We're going to be okay, I said. Not a question this time. A statement. Yeah, Marcus said, holding my hand like a lifeline. We are. But even as I said it, even as I meant it, I knew the hardest part was still to come. Patricia's trial was scheduled for March. I would have to testify. I would have to relive every moment of those 6 months, every cup of poison tea, every time she'd made me feel like I was losing my mind. And then there was the question hanging over all of us. What else had Patricia done? If she'd killed her husband and tried to kill me, who else had she hurt over the years? The police were investigating, pulling medical records from St. Catherine's, looking into the suspicious accidents and illnesses that had plagued people in Patricia's orbit. But that was a problem for another day. For now, I was alive. I was healing. And I was learning to trust again, both my husband and myself. The nightmare was over. But the reckoning had just begun. The months leading up to the trial were some of the strangest of my life. I was healing physically, at least. The chelation therapy was working. My hair had stopped falling out. The tremors in my hands had ceased. I could think clearly again, remember things, function without that awful fog clouding everything. But emotionally, that was harder. Marcus and I moved out of the estate in January. We rented a furnished apartment in Lincoln Park while the house sold, and we looked for something permanent. It was strange, living in a space that wasn't filled with Patricia's presence, eating meals that I'd prepared myself without fear, sleeping through the night without worrying about footsteps in the hallway. For the first few weeks, I couldn't drink tea at all. The smell alone made me nauseous. Marcus noticed and quietly removed all the tea from our apartment, replacing it with coffee and hot chocolate. You don't have to do that, I'd said. Yes, I do, he'd replied simply. Those small gestures, the tea removal, the way he'd taste my food before I ate it to prove it was safe, the night light he installed in our bedroom when I admitted I was afraid of the dark now, they added up. Slowly, incrementally, I began to trust him again. Our therapist, Dr. Linda Washington, was blunt in a way I appreciated. You're both trauma survivors, she told us in our third session. Marcus, your mother abused you psychologically your entire life. She murdered your father and made you complicit by keeping you in the dark. Sienna, you survived attempted murder and medical gaslighting. Neither of you is going to heal overnight. How long will it take? Marcus had asked. Dr. Washington had smiled sadly. As long as it takes. There's no timeline for this kind of healing. In February, the prosecutor's office called. They wanted to meet with me to prepare for trial. Patricia's lawyer had filed a motion to suppress some of the evidence, the recordings I'd made, the photographs from her room. They were arguing that I'd obtained them illegally. Will they succeed? I asked Jenna, who'd come with me to the meeting. Unlikely, she said. You were documenting an ongoing crime against you. Illinois law allows for that. But we need to be prepared for them to try every trick in the book. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Amanda Reeves, laid it all out for me. Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to understand something. Patricia's defense team is going to try to put you on trial. They're going to suggest you were mentally unstable, that you fabricated evidence, that you poisoned yourself for attention. They're going to make this ugly. Let them try, I said quietly. I have medical evidence. I have recordings. I have witnesses. And I have the truth. Amanda smiled. Good. That's exactly the attitude we need. But preparing for trial meant reliving everything. I had to go through every recording, every photograph, every moment of those 6 months. I had to provide detailed timelines of when I'd been sick, what symptoms I'd had, what Patricia had said and done. And then there were the other victims. The police investigation into Patricia's past had uncovered something horrifying. I wasn't the first. There had been a patient at St. Catherine's, a wealthy elderly woman named Margaret Chen who died under suspicious circumstances 15 years ago. Margaret had changed her will a week before her death, leaving a substantial sum to her dear friend Patricia Whitmore. The hospital had investigated at the time, but nothing had been proven. Now, with the context of what Patricia had done to me and possibly to her husband, they were reopening the case. Then there was Diane Kowalski, another patient who'd been under Patricia's care. Diane had survived, but she'd suffered permanent neurological damage that doctors at the time had attributed to a stroke. Now, reviewing her medical records, they saw the same pattern: confusion, tremors, unexplained symptoms that appeared suddenly and worsened over time. The prosecutor wanted to introduce evidence of these other cases to establish a pattern of behavior. Patricia's defense fought it viciously, but the judge allowed it. Your mother-in-law, Amanda told Marcus and me, appears to have been doing this for at least 20 years. We may never know how many victims there were. Marcus looked like he might be sick. How did no one see it? Because she was careful, Amanda said. She chose vulnerable victims, elderly patients, a sick husband, a daughter-in-law with no family, people who wouldn't be believed if they accused her. And she was patient. She never moved too quickly, never got greedy. If you hadn't figured it out, Sienna, you probably would have been dead within a few months, and everyone would have thought it was complications from mental illness. The words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange, cold satisfaction, because I had figured it out. I had survived. And now Patricia was going to pay for every single person she'd hurt. The trial began on a cold Monday in mid-March. The courthouse was packed. The case had attracted massive media attention. Black Widow nurse poisons daughter-in-law, the headline screamed. Patricia had become infamous, her perfectly coiffed photograph from her nursing days plastered across every news outlet. Marcus and I arrived together, flanked by Jenna and David Chin. Reporters shouted questions that we ignored. Inside, the courtroom was already full. I recognized some faces: Dr. Richardson, who would be testifying, Tom Russo, the private investigator, Diane Kowalski, in a wheelchair, her hands still trembling from the neurological damage Patricia had caused. And there, at the defense table, was Patricia. She'd lost weight. Her blonde highlights had grown out, showing gray roots. She wore a conservative navy suit, her hands folded demurely in front of her. When she saw Marcus and me walk in, her expression didn't change. But her eyes burned with hatred. The jury selection had taken 2 weeks. The final panel was 7 women and 5 men, ranging in age from 25 to 68. They looked at Patricia with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. Judge Margaret Holloway, the same judge who denied Patricia bail, called the court to order. We are here for the trial of Patricia and Whitmore, who stands accused of attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Will the prosecution present their opening statement? Amanda Reeves stood. She was impressive in a charcoal suit, her voice clear and commanding as she addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about a mother's love taken to its darkest extreme. Patricia Whitmore loved her son so much that when he married a woman she didn't approve of, she decided to eliminate the competition. Not through divorce, not through simple cruelty, but through murder. Slow, deliberate, calculated murder. She walked them through the evidence. The thallium, the vials with my name on them, the medical records showing my deterioration. She played portions of the recordings where Patricia pushed me to drink the poison tea. You will hear testimony from Sienna Brooks herself about the 6 months of hell she endured. You will hear from medical experts about how thallium poisoning works, how it mimics mental illness, how it would have killed Mrs. Brooks if she hadn't discovered what was happening. And you will hear evidence that Sienna Brooks is not Patricia Whitmore's only victim. That there is a pattern stretching back decades of Patricia Whitmore using poison to eliminate people who stood in her way. Amanda's voice dropped, became almost conversational. The defense will try to tell you that Sienna Brooks was mentally unstable, that she poisoned herself, that she fabricated evidence. But ask yourselves this: who is more likely to be telling the truth? A young woman with no history of mental illness, no criminal record, no motive to harm herself? Or a woman who worked in a psychiatric hospital for 20 years and knew exactly how to make someone appear insane? A woman who had access to restricted medications and the knowledge to use them? A woman whose own husband died under suspicious circumstances. She let that sink in, then returned to her table. At the end of this trial, we will ask you to find Patricia Whitmore guilty on all counts. Not because of who she is, but because of what she did. Thank you. The defense attorney, a polished woman named Catherine Morris, stood for her opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not what the prosecution wants you to believe. This is not a story of a murderous mother-in-law. This is a story of a deeply troubled young woman who became obsessed with her mother-in-law, who fabricated elaborate evidence, and who is now using the legal system to destroy an innocent woman. I felt Marcus tense beside me. Catherine continued. The prosecution wants you to believe that Patricia Whitmore, a respected nurse who dedicated her life to helping others, suddenly became a calculating killer. But where's the proof? Some vials that could have been planted. Some recordings that were obtained illegally and could have been edited. Medical tests that could have been manipulated. She was good, I had to admit. She created just enough doubt, just enough alternate explanation to make some jurors wonder. You will hear testimony that Sienna Brooks had been acting strangely for months before these accusations began. That she was forgetful, confused, paranoid. You will hear that she had a history of attention-seeking behavior. And you will hear expert testimony that suggests Mrs. Brooks may have been poisoning herself, a recognized psychiatric condition called Munchausen syndrome. Marcus made a small sound of disbelief. Jenna put a hand on his arm. Patricia Whitmore is not a monster, Catherine said, her voice full of conviction. She's a mother who loved her son, a nurse who dedicated her life to helping others, and a woman who is being destroyed by false accusations. At the end of this trial, I'm confident you'll find her not guilty. Thank you. The first witness was Dr. Richardson. Amanda walked him through his sessions with me, his observations about my mental state, his growing suspicions that something medical rather than psychiatric was wrong. In your professional opinion, Amanda asked, did Sienna Brooks present as someone experiencing a mental health crisis? No, Dr. Richardson said firmly. She presented as someone experiencing symptoms that mimicked mental illness, but the underlying presentation was inconsistent with any psychiatric diagnosis I'm familiar with. When I suggested testing for toxins, Mrs. Whitmore, Patricia Whitmore, became extremely agitated and tried to dissuade me from ordering the tests. That was a significant red flag. On cross-examination, Catherine tried to shake him. Isn't it true, doctor, that you'd only seen Mrs. Brooks, Sienna Brooks, twice before ordering these tests? That's correct. So, your clinical relationship with her was quite limited? The length of a clinical relationship doesn't determine the validity of clinical observations, Dr. Richardson replied calmly. I've been a psychiatrist for 35 years. I know what mental illness looks like. This wasn't it. But you can't know for certain. I can know that when a patient's mother-in-law objects to medical testing that would rule out physical causes of psychiatric symptoms, something is very wrong, Dr. Richardson interrupted. And I can know that when those tests come back positive for poison, my suspicions were correct. Next came the toxicologist, Dr. Sarah Patel, who walked the jury through the science of thallium poisoning. She explained how it worked, what symptoms it caused, how long it took to build up in the system. Based on the levels found in Mrs. Brooks's blood and hair samples, Dr. Patel testified, I would estimate she'd been exposed to thallium regularly for approximately 6 to 7 months. The dosing was careful, calculated to build up slowly over time. This wasn't accidental exposure. This was deliberate, progressive poisoning. Catherine tried to suggest I could have poisoned myself, but Dr. Patel shut that down. The pattern of exposure is inconsistent with self-administration. The levels suggest regular, controlled dosing, exactly what you'd see if someone else was administering it without the victim's knowledge. Then came Tom Russo, the private investigator, who testified about what he'd found in Patricia's background. The firing from St. Catherine's. The suspicious death of Marcus's father. The altered medical records. I found a pattern, Tom said. Everywhere Patricia Whitmore went, people got sick. People died. People had unexplained symptoms that doctors couldn't diagnose. And Patricia was always there, always helpful, always the concerned caregiver. By the end of the first week, the prosecution had built a damning case. But I knew the hardest part was coming. My testimony. On Monday morning of the second week, Amanda called me to the stand. I walked to the witness box on shaking legs, very aware of Patricia's eyes on me the entire way. I was sworn in, sat down, and looked at the jury. 12 strangers who would decide Patricia's fate, who would decide if they believed me. Amanda's questions started gently. She walked me through my background, my marriage to Marcus, Patricia moving in. Then she got to the poisoning. When did you first start experiencing symptoms? About 2 weeks after Patricia moved in, I said. It started with headaches, then dizziness. Then I started having trouble remembering things. And did you see a doctor? Many doctors. They ran tests, but couldn't find anything wrong. They suggested it was anxiety, stress. I looked at the jury, and I started to believe them. I started to think maybe I was going crazy. When did you begin to suspect it wasn't mental illness? When I found my prescription had been switched. The pills in my anxiety medication bottle weren't what my doctor had prescribed. Someone had replaced them with a different drug. I walked the jury through everything, finding the vials, the test strips, the recordings. Amanda played selected portions of the recordings, and I watched the jurors' faces as they heard Patricia pushing me to drink the tea, heard her anger when I refused, heard her cold threat in the car about who Marcus would believe. Mrs. Brooks, Amanda said, why didn't you go to the police immediately when you found the vials? Because I knew no one would believe me, I said simply. Patricia is a respected former nurse. I'm a woman who'd been displaying symptoms of mental illness for months. She'd already laid the groundwork to make me look unstable. If I'd accused her without proof, it would have just confirmed that I was paranoid and delusional. So, what did you do instead? I gathered evidence. I documented everything. I made sure that when I did accuse her, there would be no doubt. Why? I looked directly at Patricia. Because I knew she'd done this before. And I knew if I didn't stop her, she'd do it again. Then came the cross-examination. Catherine Morris approached me with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Brooks, you've been through a terrible ordeal. Yes. And you're angry at Patricia Whitmore. Yes. Angry enough to fabricate evidence against her? I didn't fabricate anything, I said steadily. But you admit you broke into her room, picked the lock on her drawer, took photographs without her permission? I was documenting evidence of a crime being committed against me. Or you were planting evidence, Catherine suggested. You could have purchased those vials yourself, labeled them, photographed them, and claimed they were Patricia's. Why would I poison myself? I asked. Munchausen syndrome, Catherine said. A psychiatric condition where people make themselves sick for attention. It's well documented. I don't have Munchausen syndrome. How do you know? You admitted yourself that you thought you were going crazy. Maybe you were right. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I was going crazy because someone was poisoning me. The medical evidence proves that. The medical evidence proves you had thallium in your system, Catherine corrected. It doesn't prove who put it there. She continued like this for over an hour, trying to poke holes in my story, suggesting alternative explanations. But I held firm. I had the truth on my side, and the truth was bulletproof. Finally, Amanda stood for redirect. Mrs. Brooks, one final question. Did you ever, at any time, administer thallium to yourself? No, I said clearly. Never. Did Patricia Whitmore poison you?
Yes.
She poisoned me for 6 months, trying to make me appear mentally unstable so Marcus would have me committed or divorced. And when that wasn't working fast enough, she tried to kill me. The words hung in the courtroom. I stepped down from the witness stand and returned to my seat beside Marcus. He took my hand and held it tightly. The prosecution rested their case. The defense called their witnesses, character witnesses for Patricia, experts who tried to cast doubt on the medical evidence. But none of them could explain away the recordings, the photographs, the pattern of behavior stretching back decades. Patricia herself didn't testify. Catherine advised against it, knowing Amanda would destroy her on cross-examination. On the final day, both sides gave their closing arguments. Amanda was passionate and compelling, walking the jury through every piece of evidence, every testimony, every reason to convict. Catherine fought hard, tried to create reasonable doubt, but I could see it wasn't working. The jury had seen too much, heard too much. Judge Holloway gave the jury their instructions and sent them to deliberate. Court is adjourned until the jury reaches a verdict. The waiting was excruciating. Marcus and I went to a nearby cafe with Jenna and David, but none of us could eat. We just sat there, drinking coffee, watching our phones for any news. The call came after only 4 hours. The jury had reached a verdict. We rushed back to the courthouse. The courtroom was packed again, reporters jostling for position. Patricia was led back in, her face pale but composed. Judge Holloway took her seat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a middle-aged black man in a crisp suit, stood. We have, Your Honor. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. Marcus's hand tightened on mine. Patricia showed no reaction. On the count of assault with a deadly weapon? Guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud?
Guilty.
For each count, the same word.
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
When it was over, Judge Holloway thanked the jury and set sentencing for 2 weeks later. As Patricia was led away, she turned and looked at Marcus one final time. I did it for you, she said, her voice carrying across the courtroom. Everything I did for you. Because I love you. Marcus stood. No, he said clearly. You did it because you're a narcissist who couldn't stand that I loved someone more than I loved you. That's not love, Mom. That's obsession. And it's over. Patricia's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw her cry, not fake tears, but real ones. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of loss, of rage that her plan had failed, that her son had chosen me over her. The bailiff led her away, still crying. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Marcus gave a brief statement. Justice has been served. My wife and I are grateful to the jury, to the prosecutors, and to everyone who helped expose the truth. Now we just want to move forward with our lives. We went home, to our new home, the Victorian in Evanston we'd closed on the week before the trial started. It was beautiful, filled with light, and most importantly, it was ours. No ghosts, no memories of Patricia, no poison. That night, Marcus and I sat on our back porch, watching the sun set over our garden. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, Marcus said, I keep thinking about what she said, that she did it for me. She did it for herself, I replied. She just convinced herself it was for you. I know. But see, part of me still loves her. The mother I thought she was, before I knew the truth. Is that crazy? No, I said softly. It's human. You can love who you thought someone was and still hold them accountable for who they actually are. 2 weeks later, we returned to court for sentencing. Patricia had been found guilty on all counts, and now Judge Holloway would decide how long she'd spend in prison. The judge had clearly read all the evidence, all the victim impact statements. When she spoke, her voice was hard. Mrs. Whitmore, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen many criminals. Some committed crimes of passion, some of desperation, some of greed. But you committed crimes of calculated cruelty. You systematically poisoned your daughter-in-law for 6 months with the full intention of killing her or having her committed to a psychiatric institution. You did this while presenting yourself as a concerned caregiver, while manipulating your own son, while hiding behind the respectability of your nursing credentials. Patricia stared straight ahead, her face blank. The evidence suggests this is not the first time you've done something like this. That you may have murdered your husband, that you caused permanent harm to at least one other patient. How many others we may never know. Judge Holloway leaned forward. You took advantage of the most vulnerable, people who trusted you, who depended on you, who loved you. And you used that trust to poison them. There is perhaps no greater betrayal. She paused, consulting her notes. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, I sentence you to 25 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. On the count of assault with a deadly weapon, 10 years, to run consecutively. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, 5 years, also consecutive. In total, you will serve 40 years. 40 years. Patricia was 58. She would be 98 before she was eligible for release. Additionally, Judge Holloway continued, I am recommending that the state attorney's office pursue charges related to the death of Robert Whitmore. What happened in this courtroom was about justice for Sienna Brooks. But there are other victims who deserve justice as well. Patricia was led away. She didn't look at Marcus or me. She kept her eyes straight ahead, her face a mask, until she disappeared through the door. It was over. In the months that followed, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. I went back to work, taking on design projects that challenged and excited me. Marcus returned to his law firm. Though he'd switched to a different department, he couldn't stomach corporate law anymore after everything that had happened. We continued therapy, working through the trauma, learning to trust each other again. It wasn't easy. There were nights I woke up from nightmares, convinced I could smell chamomile tea. There were days Marcus withdrew, lost in grief for the mother he'd thought he had. But slowly we healed. 6 months after the sentencing, I got a call from Amanda Reeves. Sienna, I wanted to let you know, we're charging Patricia with the murder of Robert Whitmore. We exhumed tissue samples and found traces of thallium. We're moving forward with prosecution. Will she get more time? She's already serving 40 years. This is more about giving Marcus closure and about making sure there's a record of what she did. I told Marcus that evening. He was quiet for a long time, then said, Thank you for pushing me to see the truth. If you hadn't, I'd still be under her spell. And you'd be dead. We saved each other, I said simply. A year after the trial, Marcus and I were having coffee on our porch when he said, I've been thinking about kids. I looked at him, surprised. We talked about it before, but had agreed to wait until we'd heal more. Not right away, he clarified, but someday. I know we said we wanted to be sure our marriage was solid first, and see, I think we're getting there. I think we're going to be okay. I thought about it, about bringing a child into the world, about becoming parents, about breaking the cycle Patricia had perpetuated, about creating something new and good and healthy.
Yeah, I said. Someday.
When we're ready. And see? When we do have kids, they're never going to know her. I'm not taking them to visit her in prison. I'm not telling them stories about her. As far as our kids will know, they only have one grandmother, and she died before they were born. Are you sure? I asked. Completely. My mother is dead to me. The woman in prison is just someone who looks like her. That night, I thought about everything we'd been through. The poisoning, the gaslighting, the trial, the fear and the pain and the long, slow healing. But I also thought about what we'd gained. Marcus and I were closer now than we'd ever been. We'd faced the worst together and survived. We'd learned what we were capable of, both individually and as a team. And I'd learned something crucial about myself. I was stronger than I'd ever known. When pushed to the edge, when fighting for my life, I hadn't broken. I'd fought back. I'd been strategic, patient, careful. I'd turned Patricia's weapons against her, and won. That strength didn't come from anger or revenge. It came from the simple, fundamental belief that I deserved to live, that I deserved to be believed, that I deserved justice. 2 years after the trial, I started a support group for victims of medical gaslighting and poisoning. There were more of us than I'd realized, people who'd been made to feel crazy by family members, by partners, by caregivers. People who'd been systematically undermined and made to doubt their own reality. We met once a month in a community center in Lincoln Park. We shared our stories, supported each other, learned to trust ourselves again. And slowly, we healed together. One evening, a young woman named Aisha came to the group. She was 26, thin and pale, with trembling hands. My mother-in-law has been making me sick, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I know she's doing something. I just can't prove it. I sat with her after the meeting, gave her Dr. Richardson's number, told her about test kits and recording devices and how to gather evidence. I saw myself in her. The fear, the doubt, the desperate need to be believed. You're not crazy, I told her firmly. Trust yourself. And if you need help, call me. Anytime. She did call, 3 weeks later. I found the proof, she said, crying. You were right. She was poisoning me. The police are involved now. When I hung up, Marcus looked at me with pride. You probably saved her life. Someone saved mine, I said. I'm just passing it on. If I've learned anything from this nightmare, it's this. Evil doesn't always announce itself with dramatic music and obvious villainy. Sometimes evil wears pearls and makes you tea and tells you it's all for your own good. Sometimes evil looks like love, but real love, healthy love, doesn't control. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't slowly poison you while smiling and calling you dear. Real love trusts. Real love believes. Real love lets you be your own person, make your own choices, live your own life. Marcus and I have that now. It took almost losing everything to find it, but we have it. And Patricia? She's in Vandalia Correctional Center, serving her 40 years. She writes to Marcus sometimes, letters he throws away without reading. She's asked to see him, but he's refused every time. She made her choices. Now she lives with the consequences. As for me, I drink coffee now instead of tea. I trust my instincts. I surround myself with people who build me up instead of tearing me down. And every morning, when I wake up in our sun-filled bedroom in our Victorian house in Evanston, I'm grateful. Grateful to be alive. Grateful to be healthy. Grateful to have fought for myself when no one else would. And grateful that the woman who tried to destroy me failed. Because I'm still here.
I'm thriving.
And I'm using my survival to help others survive too. That's the best revenge of all. Not her suffering, but my happiness. Not her punishment, but my freedom. Not her ending, but my beginning. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt gaslit or manipulated or made to doubt your own reality, please know, you're not crazy. Trust yourself. Gather evidence.
Seek help.
And never, ever let someone convince you that their version of events is more real than your own lived experience. Your life is worth fighting for, and you are stronger than you know. Thank you for journeying with me through Sienna's story. May we all have the courage to fight our own battles and the wisdom to recognize poison when it's served with a smile.